Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today in War Thunder it is time to talk about another devlog for update 1.89, and with the addition of the MiG-21, one thing that I did talk about in the last video is this now opens up a well of opportunities for other nations. I mentioned the Lightning, the F-104, but at least in my wildest dreams I didn't think we would see a jump from the F-100D to the F-4C Phantom II. But that seems to be what is happening in War Thunder right now. We have a Mach 2 capable American jet, which is definitely more of a fighter bomber style, but at the top echelons of War Thunder, with nothing really being able to catch it, and also not having a lot of the disadvantages that the MiG-21 has, I can definitely see this being used as an out-and-out fighter. So what is interesting about the F-4C Phantom II? Well, the first thing is that it doesn't have any onboard guns, is probably the best way of putting it. Instead, you have to rely on external gun pods. But the external gun pods that it has to rely on are incredibly good, and you can actually see that you can have multi-loadouts with this machine. So you can run bombs, you can run some Sidewinders, and also this gun pod in the center. Now, if you want to know what specific gun pods are available for this machine, it gets 3 gun pods with rapid-fire 20mm Vulcan cannons on it, and this is what it looks like. So you have at least 3 sets of Vulcan cannons. So one of the things that I talked about with the MiG-21 is you have only 2 air-to-air missiles, and then you have a very limited amount of offensive armament in the form of 60 rounds of 30mm ammunition. The F-4C is not going to have that problem. It has Sidewinders of the wazoo. It can carry at least 4 of them in this configuration you see here. Then the fact that it can carry 3 sets of Vulcans. Then it can also carry Bullpups. It can also carry rockets and bombs. The only thing that seems to be missing from it right now, from a historical point of view, is I don't see any Shrikes. Instead, I just see upgraded Bullpups. So this is actually going to get better Bullpups than the machines which are coming alongside it, or are alongside it, I should say, like the F-100 and the FJ4. So with this machine, it's getting so many upgrades over pretty much everything else that we have in game for America, and I definitely think you could label this as some power creep. We're going from a Mach 1 capable aircraft to a Mach 2 capable aircraft, but alongside that, we're also adding in a bunch of different bells and whistles as well, including a ton of different armaments. And I'll talk about why I think this may be an issue overall, but it does mean at least that now that we have the 2 major nations, at least in air, in War Thunder, at least now we have the building blocks for what can be seen as other nations getting Mach 2 capable aircraft as well. Something to also note is just like the MiG-21, at sea level this thing runs at about Mach 1.1, but then at altitude of around about 11,000, so lower than the MiG-21, it can get up to Mach 2.1. So this is going to be faster than the MiG-21, but what's going to weigh it down is all of its secondary armaments, which is something you're going to have to watch out for. And also, because of the fact that it doesn't have a primary armament in the form of a gun, what we've seen in the past is modifications have become a way to get people to grind either air-to-air missiles, bombs, so on and so forth, basically secondary armaments. What is the Phantom going to look like as a stock vehicle? Like, what is going to be the stock loadout for the Phantom II? And that is something I'm personally really interested in, because obviously it'll have its radar, which you can, see obviously it's in its nose. It also has a pilot and a co-pilot, which is more of a navigator bombardier type of deal. But the main thing is it'll have its radar, but what armament is it going to get stock? Because I think this will make it either a lot easier or a lot harder for people to grind it, and may screw with the statistics. Now, it is well known that when fighter bombers get added to the game, or fighters which have bombing capabilities, I think is probably a better way of doing it, statistics can be heavily skewed one way or another, which is why I'm kind of worried about the addition of this. So I'm happy that it's coming into the game, because a lot of people have asked for it, a lot of people are going to be happy about it, and it opens doors for other nations. But if we talk about just from a holistic point of view, If people are running this as just a bomber, and if people are running it in aerialistic with just mainly bombs and rockets or the bullpups, and the idea is so they can, get a bunch of ground targets, maybe try and grind it out, maybe take it into ground realistic, unless you get a very dedicated team of individuals, this thing will get eaten by other planes because of the extra weight that it has, and also because of the fact that it has, because of the fact that it's going to be low and slow and trying to hit ground targets. So you might have a situation that you used to get and still get nowadays with the P-47, where people take it out as ground pounders with the rockets and the bombs, and in a way that is a fighter which is wasted on your team, because they're not going to be able to fight the fighters that are around you. So instead you are one fighter down, and maybe that guy gets a few ground targets, maybe he doesn't, maybe he gets annihilated before he gets there, but he's never going to be as useful as a general bomber. So what happens is it screws up the balance of your team, and this is something that I talked about in the P-59 video that I did a while back, where with the P-59A, it's very easy to get 4 or 5 kills in the machine. It's an incredibly great machine at one-on-one engagements. It's got a great elevator, turns impressively well. But the problem with it is the fact that you have a scenario where your teams are falling apart, or they're made mainly of attackers and bombers, and therefore you have to carry your heart out in order just to win a match. Now, that is an issue I can see with the F-4C Phantom too, where if you get whole teams of this thing, but people are setting them up to be more of an attacker-bomber idea, then you're just going to end up in a lot of scenarios where you, if you want to be a fighter, like if you're in your F-100 or whatever, are going to have to deal with overwhelming force from other nations. Now, comparing this machine to the MiG-21, there is no comparison. The F-4C has so much more stuff to it. It has so many bells to its whistle. You have the fact that you have the extra cannons. That is just the huge thing, right? The MiG-21, it has such limited availability of armament compared to the F-4C Phantom. So comparing this machine, which is faster than it, which is going to lose less speed in the turn, which has more armaments all over it, and has more access to everything else. It also has radar. I'm not even sure if the MiG-21 has radar in the configuration that we're getting. I'm sure it probably does in some form or another. But the fact is, this plane just outdoes the MiG-21 that we're getting into the game so well because of just the amount of stuff it has on it. Its multi-role capabilities. 228 Mighty Mouse rockets, 48 Zunis, 12 750 pounders, 18 500s, 18 250s, and 11 1000s. And that's not even talking about the Bullpups. That's not even talking about the fact that you're getting the AGM-12C Bullpups and the Sidewinders, which I'm sure will be AIM-9Es as well, to follow with the F-100. So this thing's going to be capable of doing everything you want it to. It's going to be insane. So I'm really interested to see how this is going to be countered. The only way I can see it being countered by what we currently have in the game, or what we currently have in the form of the MiG-21, is if the F-4C Phantom II pilots are not gearing themselves up to be fighters, and instead are gearing themselves up to be ground attackers, which obviously will happen from time to time, and therefore, other win rates will be bolstered. But what I don't want to see is a scenario where, because you've added this machine, because we already have mixed battles at top tier of jets, everybody's going to play this machine, and it's just going to be whoever can, hit the ground targets first, and then maybe get a few trade kills. Those individuals are, the ones who are going to win the battle. I think it'll be incredibly boring for the majority of people, and maybe the meta shifts, maybe it doesn't, but it will really depend on what you get as a stock armament for this. If you get a stock armament of a Vulcan, or maybe 3 Vulcans, then I think it'll be fine. But if the stock armament is, AIM-9Es, bombs, Vulcan, everything like that, then we might have a few issues. I'm incredibly happy to see it. I really am, because a lot of people have been talking about it for a very long time. I don't think it has too much of an effect on ground forces just because of radar-guided AA, but it really depends, I suppose, on how good these new Bullpups are in the game themselves. The other thing as well when it comes to the machine is it will be able to engage at decently long ranges, but for me, the radar guided AA is just very strong right now when used correctly. I suppose alongside the ADATs, you have a deadly combination now in ground forces, though, where the Americans were missing something which had a big oomph with it when it came to the top tier of ground forces in the air. Well, you have it now. You have the best helicopter in the game. You have, even with the additions of the Eurocopter, you still have the best air-to-ground pounder in the form of the helicopter. You now have easily the best multi-role machine at top tier, and you have a pretty damn good ground lineup as well with the ADATs. So I don't want to hear any Americans complaining for at least 2 months, please. You know, you have all your shiny toys, and I'm just sat over here with my Swift. Okay, and I've got to be happy with my two versions of the Swift, while you get something like an F-4C Phantom 2. So, have fun, enjoy it, and I'll catch you next time. I'd just like to thank Ambrosius McClellan, B. Young, Blackie, Daniel Stanton, John Ryman, Joseph Anders, Martinez, Mopar 1969, Moxie, Super Cacti, Uyans Terry, and Elove Goats, and of course Seductive Trash Can, for supporting the channel.